Okay, everybody. Welcome to another episode. I've got my friend from the US of A here, the inimitable Frank, and we just thought we'd see if we can catch up on what's been happening lately. So, how are you, man?
I'm good. Trying to stay out of the heat. The deep South summers are brutal, so it's an indoors day for my day off.
Well, we've been having a brutal summer over here, but in quite a different way to how you have. But now I've been offline for 24 hours. Has anything happened significant recently?
Let me think here. I mean, I've been online, but I haven't really noticed. Oh yeah. An idiot decided attempted to assassinate former President Trump on live TV. Yeah. All the while, pretty much providing Trump and his team the election. Other than a successful attempt on his life, which God forbid happens, Trump has wrapped it up. There are, I'm not sure if you've seen yet, the iconic photos coming from that.
Someone's got a rally photo there, haven't they?
Oh, there. Yeah, I've got. Shows you how old I am. I'm still on Facebook. And I have a handful of very old, very left-leaning friends, and I've warned them, get used to seeing that, especially that one photo with the flag in the background and his fist in the air, surrounded by his team. That is an Iwo Jima moment. That is an iconic, historic photo. Whoever took that photo, kudos. Kudos to that photographer. In fact, I think on Twitter they identified him as a New York Times photographer that should win whatever prizes photographers win.
That was quite a photograph. That really was quite a photograph.
Incredible. Have you seen the one kind of, that he's on a platform? Of course, it's like a worm's eye view right after he got hit, and then his security team pushed him to the ground to cover for him, and he's got a little blood. It's just it's like the sun's coming in on this side, and you see the little blood trickling down. That's a really powerful photo too. His eyes are somewhat open, and I just the images coming out of that are amazing. Kind of going back to the old JFK Nixon debate, where optics are everything. Trump's got it in the bag if he can just stay alive. And let's talk about a security team, because there are many, and of course, in this day and age, and you have thousands of people around him at this rally, and everybody has their own camera. Lots of videos are coming out. They've got videos of they're not Secret Service, because they're you see police written on the back of their vests. Okay, now to do the full story here, the shooter was approximately 150 yards away. Sorry, I converted to meters for your fans.
It's not that different. Yeah.
Okay, he was for a shooter a short distance away on a roof. Now, why Secret Service or even local law enforcement agent, local police didn't see this guy on the roof with a clear shot at a presidential candidate, former president also. But they've got videos of cops on a near roof, I believe right behind where Trump was talking, with their guns, tripods, and everything set up, and they seem to pause for 3 minutes. They're looking now, angles or something. I don't know for sure, so I don't want to extrapolate it out any further than it is. But it looks like they're looking at the shooter and they're waiting, and then the shooter takes his shots, multiple shots, and then they react and kill him. Well, why is there? And there's about a 3 minute delay.
Is there?
I'm hoping there's a real explanation for this. I'm trying not to go too conspiratorial about a pause of that long.
Yeah.
Much less why he's up there to begin with without getting spotted. There are also other videos you may have seen of individuals, of Trump supporters on the ground being interviewed saying, yeah, we were talking to the cops saying we spotted this guy before he started firing. So, you know, that stirred up a wasp nest of
this is the world we live in now, isn't it? Is that we have to, I mean, in a way it's quite good because we now question everything that we see.
And we should, yes.
And that's quite a good thing in a way. I mean, it does mean that, you know, obviously Trump was shot, you know, he was shot in the ear or something, wasn't he? Or something like that, you know, and there's blood on his face and stuff. So it does look as if he really was shot. And, you know, it just seems like a straightforward assassination attempt. But then you got the things that you just said about, you know, where there's an open roof and there's a sniper on it, and you know, I didn't know of this thing about the 3-minute delay. But it's, you know, and of course the thing is, I'm not questioning it necessarily, but if you wanted to make Trump look heroic, you couldn't do a better job, could you? You know,
no, I know. Well, and of course that's amongst the many narratives getting thrown around now, that it was staged to make him look like a martyr. You know, that's some pretty hardcore commitment to it, though, because there was an innocent bystander shot and killed. There was two people in the crowd that were shot. One dead, the other I believe will survive. Pretty because
if it was staged and that came out, I mean, that would be the end of him, wouldn't it? So
so and of course it's the have you I'm not sure if you've seen the corporate media spin on it. The immediate takes were Trump fell, something happened at a rally, and Secret Service had to take him off the stage because he fell. There were loud noises. The rally was interrupted from loud popping noises. Yeah, it's called gunfire.
Yeah.
They literally spent most of last night reporting that they made a point to not say assassination attempt. They made a point to not say shooter. They made a point to obfuscate the actual truth. I've saved lots of screenshots and stuff. I may do me a video later about that myself, because you've still got too many normies out there that's what they watch. One video I saw on Twitter, a young lady was in not Times Square, somewhere in New York, very crowded, like a cafe or something with TVs all around, and the place was packed, maybe 100 people there. And she panned around, and this is maybe an hour after this all went down. Not one TV screen was talking about it. It was sports. It was other distractions. And she's like, this is huge international news. Much less, you know, Trump's from New York, you know, and not that he's not a real big fan of New Yorkers, though. But anyway, that should be top of the news. That should be out there for everybody to see, and it's getting swept under the rug. And of course, they're going to twist. The left is going to be twisting this around, saying, well, it's all that violent rhetoric and stochastic terrorism that Trump has been adding to. Like, well, hold on. You've got Kathy Griffith, a very failed old actress, with a fake Trump head, bloody head, like she had beheaded Trump, taking a photo of him. You've got way more evidence on the left than the right about blatant, obvious, direct violence against the man that got shot. And whether or not you're religious or not, somebody was looking out for him, because he literally had just turned his head right as the shot went off. And had he not, it would have been JFK all over again. So
yeah. I mean, we've had there's a British journalist, a guy called David Aronovich, and I think less than a week ago, he said he put out a tweet saying it was a joke. Sure, it was a joke, but it was a joke, with some spice to it. And he said, I think the best thing for Biden is to get Trump murdered or something, get him, just to get rid of him, and
right.
it almost happened, and I mean, of course it was a joke, of course it wasn't serious, but the fact is that had it been the other way, been somebody on the right saying that and somebody on the left getting killed, they would be crucified for it.
Oh, they'd go apoplectic over it.
Yeah. I mean, we had I don't know if you remember, we've had 2 MPs murdered in recent years. There was a woman called Jo Cox in the run up to the Brexit vote.
Okay.
She was murdered supposedly by a supposedly far right character, Yes. So she was, it's tragedy, she was murdered. And then there was also a guy called David Amis a couple of years ago, a Conservative Party politician. And by all accounts, as a politician, he was apparently a pretty good egg, as was the woman, Jo Cox.
Yeah.
But, the year afterwards, there's the commemorations, and then there's, in the Houses of Parliament, and there's supposedly a minute silence. And it was reported as we're commemorating the death of David Amis. He died. And he died. Oh. No, he didn't die. He was murdered by some mad Islamist with a fucking great machete. He didn't die. He was murdered.
Yeah.
But this is what we have to cope with all the time, isn't it? This kind of stuff.
Right.
So, what do you think would have been the outcome had it been
successful, a successful assassination?
What do you think would have happened? Sort of,
I think all hell would break loose. I don't know. The normies aren't quite there yet. And unfortunately, you and I both know that they far outnumber those kind of paying attention. Those paying attention, let's just break all those down. I'm of the opinion that those paying attention, most of them aren't nut jobs, but there's going to be a chunk of those in the know that's really going on that might do really, really bad things. If he'd gone down, okay, well, let's. I won't predict on just general, violence in the streets or anything like that. I gotta hope that doesn't ever happen. It could. But let's talk about Barron Trump, his oldest son. You can't tell me this isn't radicalizing him at all. If he's witnessed his father, being excoriated in the media to begin with, indicted, impeached twice, all these hoaxes against him, and any time, and I hate to have to put this caveat out there every time I say this, I'm not a huge fan of Trump. I can sympathize with the man though, because he's been through hell and back. Some of it he's brought upon himself. Yes, he's not perfect. He's a loudmouth. He's many things. He is not deserving any of what has happened to him in the last 8 years, of course. But his son and his family, his entire family, everybody's seen this, but imagine yourself the eldest son of a man that's been impeached twice, been falsely accused of being a felon. And you notice the media is making every effort. Every time they talk about Trump, he's a felon. He's a felon. The word felon is just getting driven into the ground because he's a felon. They voted unsuccessfully, thank God, to strip him of all his Secret Service detail protection. So
did that happen?
No, no, it got voted down.
Oh, I see. Right.
He's had to hire a lot of private guys. He's hired now. I think he needs to up his security, and I think he's smart enough to know that he's going to have to surround. Well, he should have been surrounding his people with people he just trusts anyway. But I think that's going to go up another level now. But like back to Barron, if I was the eldest son of a man that's been through all of this, this is just going to have to harden. This is going to harden his heart and harden his resolve. Hopefully, there are a lot of. We'll get into Trump's possible vice president pick, VP pick. A lot of people are saying they should just pick Barron as his vice president as insurance because, okay, you're going to kill the father. Well, the son's just going to step in now. Yeah. I don't know the legalities behind all that. And the optics would be incredible because it almost sounds monarchical, almost sounds like.
Well, you do have this thing in the States. This is a weird thing for a country that is not a monarchy.
Yeah.
You have these families, don't you? You have the Roosevelt. You have the Clintons, you have the Kennedys, you have the Bushes, and maybe you're going to have the Trumps.
Well, we have a monarchy. We just don't call it that. It's just not official, because they definitely have their own palaces, and they definitely have their own treasuries and perks. So, but yeah, keep an eye on Barron.
How old is Barron? How old is he?
I think he's 18 or 19. I could be wrong. The photos I've seen of him, he's a very young man. But he's a spitting image of Trump. I know that much, just much thinner. So
we've just elected a Labour Party MP who's 21, I think. And he's a 21-year-old.
That photo of him is incredibly... get a better angle from the top or something. Very unattractive photo that's going around of him. But he's of 22?
22, something like that, And wow. We know 22-year-olds. Some of them are great, but some of them are just fucking 22, man. They're not even grown up yet. So I mean, do you think he's going to go for Barron then? I mean,
I don't think so. That's just this is internet, theories getting thrown out there.
Who are the close runners? Tulsi Gabbard is she one of them?
The short list, and I've seen lots of theories out there. I've heard talk of J.D. Vance, which seems like this is a guy. He's a congressman out of Kentucky, I think, or Ohio. Anyway, he's a politician, and he seemed a few years ago like a really good guy, but I think he's sold out. I think I've seen a few rumblings how he's just supporting Israel a little too much, and we'll get into the whole Israel-Gaza thing later if you want. But Vivek Ramaswamy, I know I mispronounced his name. Oh, good Lord! They talk about these people all the time. I should remember. And I don't have.
Because you can have somebody who's not a politician, can't you?
What's that?
You can have someone who's not actually a politician, can't you?
No. As long as as long as the political party, I believe the GOP has to approve it. I think.
What?
But no, it doesn't have to be a politician.
Because Trump wasn't a politician, was he?
True. The traditional strategy for a VP is twofold. You want a bulldog. You want a guy that, because the president is supposed to be very statesmanly and very reserved and calculating, while the VP, you can sick the VP on, to be a little more aggressive verbally and whatnot.
Less diplomatic, perhaps. Yeah.
Yes. Typically, also, and the second part of a VP traditionally comes from a large state with lots of voters, Florida, Texas, California, New York, that he's he's a native-born Floridian, so that would almost guarantee that state going for the presidential bid. So I'm trying to think.
Because I even mentioned somebody even mentioned Tucker Carlson.
That would be amazing.
Yeah.
I don't think Tucker would be flattered, but I don't think Tucker would do it. I've been watching a lot of his stuff on Twitter, and yes, I'm not going to call it X, Elon. It's still Twitter. I've been watching many of his his interviews on Twitter, and he just needs to sit back and be a reporter. He's stated that he's back home with his family, and I don't think Tucker doesn't want to get in that dogfight. It would be an amazing pick if he said yes. That would be amazing. I would actually vote for Trump, because as of right now, I'm still not voting for Trump. I might not vote for anybody, but that might change. God only knows. As of 6-8 hours ago, I was pumping my fist in the air and thinking I'm going to vote Trump just from the emotional impact of the events of yesterday. So,
yeah. It's funny, this thing, isn't it? How we kind of, I mean, like I was saying earlier, I think there is a new impulse which is quite good. This idea that you question everything, and we see something, it seems obvious, and the mere obviousness of it, makes us question it. And the thing is that it does seem as if the Secret Service have got some explaining to do. It does seem like that,
a lot.
And there are, it's almost like the Israel-Gaza thing, when that happened, the October the 7th thing happened, and then people are saying, well, it was Israelis doing it to themselves or whatever it is, and and maybe that's true and maybe it is, and I don't know, and this is not something that I don't know enough about, but the fact is that even the most professional of outfits fuck up every so often,
Oh yeah.
And do you remember the famous SAS Iranian embassy siege? Do you remember that was all over the television?
Oh, were they bringing out the hostages?
Yeah, it was 1980. It was a long time ago. It was when the SAS became famous.
Okay.
They were famous within, people in the American army would have known about them, but
Right.
most people didn't really know much about them, and they became famous because it was on live television, and they were thought of as this brilliant elite, which of course they are, and then a few years later they did some sort of operation in Gibraltar, and they really botched it. It was going after some IRA terrorists, and they completely botched it. And it was, which I suppose is the nature of these things, that these things are fluid and you can't control for everything, but it was in public, and they didn't cover themselves in glory after that, you see. But
right.
Most people have forgotten about that, but they still remember the Iranian embassy siege. So,
right.
So the fact that the Secret Service may have dropped the ball is not, it's unlikely, but it's not outside of the realms of possibility, is it?
Right. And you have to think of it this way. Did they drop the ball accidentally, or did they drop the ball on purpose?
Yeah. Well, this is our minds now, isn't it? This is what we think now, isn't it?
I know. Well, all you have to do is go on Twitter to the Secret Service page and look at how they've been pushing for DEI. They're trying to get more diverse. And if you saw the videos that I saw a lot of incredibly short women in in that security detail. Yeah. And I don't want to come off completely sexist, but I'm sorry, unless you're built like a Janina Carano, or unless you're built like a refrigerator, and you're a woman, you don't need to be in a security detail like that. I'm sorry. They looked incredibly. Now, mind you, I understand the adrenaline rush and the situation that they were in, and and nobody can predict exactly how they would act if they were in that situation. But from an outsider's perspective, they looked horrible. A lot of fumbling around. Literally on mic, you could hear one of the women screaming, "What are we doing now?" Now, that's a question that should never come to your mind in a situation like that. They should have game played this 1,000 times, you know, until it's driven in your head on, okay, you're going to grab the president, you're going to clear a path to the limo. You know, they should have game planned this a long fucking time ago. Pardon my French. So they looked horrible. They really did.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, on the one hand, yeah, I mean, exactly. I didn't really study it so much to come to that conclusion necessarily, but you know, I'm taking your word for it, certainly. But
and I know it sounds horrible, but that's the fact. If you want to stay protected, you want large men in front of you. I'm sorry. You know,
the other thing
go ahead. I'm just closing the door there. Yeah.
The other thing that I thought was a more positive interpretation of it is that protocol they had where they just physically surround the target, because you know that is the thing, is that is the ethos. You take the bullet for the president. You know, he's not the president at the moment, but you know, so if the shooter had been able to get off more shots, then they would have been in the firing order. And of course, if you've got a small, slim, petite, blonde woman, yeah, she's not as big as a big guy, is she? So
no.
You know.
And they've all surely they've all got bulletproof vests and whatnot. You dogpile the target and cover them up. When Reagan was when Brinkley, what's his name? When Reagan was almost assassinated, there was that one secret security guard that it took a bullet for the president. So that's what you do, you know.
Was he killed?
No, shot in the side. I think he literally he did the movie thing. If I remember correctly, this is many years ago. He jumped in front of Hinckley. That was his name, Hinckley. So
I have to say that it was quite impressive to see Trump make the gesture.
Yeah,
it was pretty impressive actually, because he could, in those sort of high stress situations, you'd think that the most important thing is that you get out there, you get to
self-preservation. Yeah,
and the fact that he didn't do that really is quite something.
Right. I think he was literally reaching for the mic. He had his team all over him, and I think he was trying to get to the mic to talk. Instead, it looks like he yelled "fight" a few times. Fight, I believe is what he said while raising the fist. And yeah, he's a fighter, man. I more kudos. It's very gangster of him, you know. Many people are saying this was a Teddy Roosevelt moment for him. Let's go back to some American history where Roosevelt was shot while talking to a crowd and sloughed it off and continued his speech afterwards. You know, so yes.
I must look into that, because I only heard about that today. I didn't know that Teddy Roosevelt was faced an assassination attempt, so I must have a look at that.
That's how the story goes. Not that there were too many cell phones at the time to record it, but you know, that's how history has it down. Whether it's accurate or not, I don't know. But yeah, it's look into it. It's really cool, I think.
Do you think that so you think that event will have bolstered his appeal to a lot of undecideds, do you think?
I know for a fact it has. I see it all over the internet. For what it's worth, you know, people are saying that they weren't going to vote for him, but now they are. And like I said, we live in such a weird timeline now that in a normal timeline, yes, this should clinch the election for him. Whether or not, you know, the powers that be are going to allow him to win, that's still to be seen. So, but yeah, he should win by a landslide, an unprecedented 49 state landslide. We're going to have to see. November's still a long ways away, you know, relatively speaking.
No matter what, he'd never win in California, would he?
Or New York.
Yeah. I mean, you know, there are other states. I'm just this is my ignorance here, but I'm imagining there are other states which could go either way. Like I know Pennsylvania, for instance, you know, because it's got big cities, so they have a lot of liberal types.
Yeah.
But it's also, you know, there's a lot of blue collar places, isn't there? And it's an older industrial area, so there'll be more, you know, in those places like Pittsburgh, perhaps they'd be more amenable to Trump, maybe. You know, I don't know, but I would find it strange that he would win all 50 states, but you know, I defer to your home knowledge actually. So,
well, yeah, that are just hyperbole on my part. I don't know, but like I said, if you were to take an individual like Trump that is, and one of his most important or prescient quotes, he said, it was a year or two ago, he says, remember, they're not after me, they're after you, I'm just in the way. So,
yeah. Well,
like I said, in any normal time, yeah, it should be a landslide for this guy to win. But like I said,
evolved, hasn't he? He has evolved. I mean, he has evolved.
Yeah.
You know, he's been kind of tempered by the attacks on him. He seems to have gotten harder. You know, the more they attack him.
Can you blame him? You know?
Well, I mean, you know how there's that phrase, it says anything that doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah.
Now, there is some truth in that, but there's also, to some people, that's not true, because what ends up happening is that accumulated attacks on people weaken them, you know, accumulative. Yeah. But for some people, it definitely is true. And I think it certainly seems as if Trump's defiance is, well, I got to say, it's quite impressive. Yeah. And, you know, and culminating in what happened yesterday, you know, so. Yeah. Well, things have got an awful lot more interesting, as if they weren't interesting enough. And I'm not always saying that interesting is good necessarily.
No. Right. What's the old saying go, may you live in interesting times? Well, you know, yeah, this is the weirdest time. Definitely.
Yeah, we've got so you were mentioning, you know, that you weren't a Trump guy, so you tend more towards the Libertarians, aren't you? There's been some developments, hasn't there? I mean, we haven't spoken for 2 or 3 months, so
it's been too long. You
know, it might be a bit out of date, but you know, what's the deal with the Libertarians at the moment?
Man, how long you got? Because
I mean,
because it's the Libertarians, man. Oh God, I'm not sure if you've ever heard the phrase. Have you ever tried to herd cats? You can't herd cats, and that's the Libertarians for you. The official party, Libertarian Party, Big L, they at their convention they had Trump and Vivek Ramaswamy. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that name. They had a lot of big names that came to their convention. First time that a third party has ever had another party leader like that talk. And he was somewhat well received. Talking about Trump gave maybe a 20 or 30 minute long speech. He was somewhat well received. He got booed a few times. And like I said, with the LP, the official LP, they had all their delegates from all the different states. And the double-edged sword of the LP, one thing I love about it is each state affiliate of every state Libertarian Party affiliate can do their own thing. They're independent to be as liberal as they want or as conservative as they want, and make their own platforms, which is good if you're living in that state, because that's if that's where you want to be and how you want to go politically. Then you get them all in DC, and there were some boos and a little disrespect. And now, mind you, I have no problem at all booing a politician, but you need to hear them out first let him speak his piece, and then you boo him. Then you ask hard questions, and then you can get in his face and say, okay, well, you said this about Israel, you did this, said this about guns, whatever your issues are. And one good thing with Trump, he did say, for what it's worth, and this is coming out of a politician's mouth, this is Trump saying he would put a libertarian on his in his cabinet, one libertarian in his cabinet, and he would free Julian Assange.
Yeah.
Or was it Assange or Ross Ulbricht? Anyway, there's a couple guys out there that need to be freed, Ross and Julian, and there's another individual.
Isn't it? There's Edward Snowden over in Russia as well.
Snowden, thank you. Yes. That should be completely pardoned. And remind me, we'll get back to Julian Assange after the LP here. He said his piece. Vivek and the potential vice president candidate, what's his name? Clint Russell, I believe is his name, had a debate. And it was a friendly debate. It was more of a conversation than a debate. They had a really good talk about very libertarian principles about free markets and taxes and whatnot. It leaned more towards the economic side of everything. And then they came down to the vote. And mind you, the LP does things completely different from the other two major parties for good reason. They have ranked choice voting, where it isn't just an up or down vote for your guy or whatever. You literally, you can put 5 people on your ballot, and your number one guy all the way down to your number 5 guy. The last guy or woman that you would pick would be your last pick, and it's a process of elimination.
Yeah.
As the vote tallies come in, whoever has less than 5% of the vote gets kicked out, and then it just rolls that way. I won't bore you with too many details, mainly because I've forgotten most of it, but it boiled down to the one guy I was hoping that I was rooting for. It boiled down to Chase Oliver and Michael Rechtenwald. Right, Rechtenwald was my guy. He really smart guy. He's a reformed socialist, and he's seen the errors in his way from, this was 15 years ago. He was a professor, but I think I agree with more of his issues than Chase Oliver, which is an openly gay man. Nothing against that, but he's also for open borders and the whole trans thing. Yeah. He bought into the COVID regime thing. I don't agree. I agree with maybe he's very pro-gun. And there's just one or two issues that he's mentioned that I agree with. So I didn't agree with him. And it boiled down to where Rechtenwald got kicked out. And with the Libertarians, you can vote for NOTA, none of the above. And the very final, it went 7 rounds, which has never happened before. At the 7th round, NOTA almost beat Chase Oliver.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So he did not get a resounding, was not a mandate from the Libertarian Party at all. He barely beat NOTA. But he is the official Libertarian Party candidate, and his vice president is an ex-policeman, which goes completely against typical libertarian principles, about being anti-authoritarian.
Yeah, having a police force is not in concept is not a libertarian idea, is it?
No, you can protect yourself, and if you want to, privately hire a security force, that's great, but nothing with the governmental stamp on it. Because that just leads to more and more monopolized violence, in my opinion. So,
I think when the Metropolitan Police was first founded, which was the first professional police force in the world, I mean, they really weren't popular.
Yeah,
they really weren't. They were thought of in the way that probably you and I think about police forces now.
Yeah.
which is strange because they had to work quite hard to become accepted as a, you know, as a necessary and good part of society, you know.
Right.
But you know, they've managed to piss that out all up the wall in the last 20 years anyway. So.
Oh
But
yeah. No,
yeah.
as of 10 years ago, I backed the blue as of 10 years ago, until and really what should have opened my eyes was Waco, because I was living in Texas at the time, and I saw on live TV what the ATF and local police did to that poor compound. I used to back the blue, but not anymore, needless to say. Back to the LP. So Chase Oliver is the LP candidate, and the chairwoman of the LP is a very smart woman, Angela McCardle. She's supporting the candidate, but she's being smart about it. He realizes because he's a very left-leaning candidate, she's promoting him when it comes to swing states and blue states to steal votes away from Biden to help Trump out. See how brilliant this is? She's not endorsing Trump.
Yeah.
You know, she's endorsing her candidate just enough to where possibly you can steal some votes away from Biden, because you're not going to steal. Chase Oliver's not stealing any votes from anybody on the right. You know, you might steal a lot from the middle and the left, though. So it's a very smart move on her part. You know, so like I said, it's just been one weird thing after another. And I stayed up way too late watching all that when it went down a month or two ago.
A true political nerd.
Yeah, well, because I'm really hoping, I mean, think about it. We have a dribbling idiot in the Oval Office now who probably has Parkinson's. And I have a hard time feeling sorry for him, because he's been a politician for 40 or 50 years now, and he has backed incredibly bad policies over the decades. So I have a hard time feeling sorry for him. I'm actually more mad at his wife and those around him, because it's abusive the way that they trot him out. Did you see any of the debate?
I didn't see. I heard about it. I didn't see it, but I saw little clips of it. You know,
Trump was smart. Trump in the past, you know, has been the bulldog and gone on tirades and really been ugly with people. He was smart. All he had to do was sit back and shut up and let Biden completely ruin himself. You know, stuttering and mumbling, and of course a lot of people are thinking that maybe that they let Biden fail on purpose so they can get him out of the way and bring in somebody else, you know. So God only knows where that's going to go.
We've had a similar tactic by our new Prime Minister now. He's Keir Starmer from the Labour Party. He's now our minister, and he got an absolute massive landslide. But in terms of, because it's a parliamentary, because of the way the seats work, you know, he's got a massive landslide in terms of seats, but not in terms of vote share.
Yeah.
But he basically spent the entire election campaign not saying anything, and that's all he had to do. And the Tories just burnt themselves to the ground, basically. What he did. So now we're saddled with this ridiculous, really quite unpopular socialist government that has a massive parliamentary majority. I mean, it's the weirdest thing, you know. I suppose all this horse trading in politics is just what it is, but you know, you get these perverse results really, because unofficially, our third party is, of course, the Reform Party, Nigel Farage's party.
Right.
But they only got 5 seats out of 650. They only got 5 seats, you know. But they got 4 million votes.
Yeah.
But the Liberal Democrats, who are, well, I don't know what they are. Nobody knows what they are. They're just this. They're just an entity that isn't Conservative and it isn't Labour. It's just they're just there.
Miscellaneous.
Yeah, and they're just yeah, they don't stand for anything. They don't really do anything. And they got 3.7 million votes, and they got 71 seats. So this is how our political system seems to be sort of failing. I suppose in a way it isn't failing because 18 million people didn't vote.
Okay.
And so we got this because they were so disgusted with the Tories, with the Conservatives, that they wouldn't vote for the Conservatives, but they didn't.
Right.
But not enough of them voted for Reform. Apparently, Reform came second in 98 seats. No,
Was that planned? To
well,
just
no.
to discourage that voter bloc, so hopefully they don't vote.
Well, you see, I think that I released a video about this last week, saying that we've been had, and strangely enough, another weird thing is, strangely enough, it got 12,000 hits, whereas the video before they got 800, and the video after they got 800, and the one after that got 800, but that one got 12,000 hits for some reason, and I've no idea why, but
yeah.
But I think what happened is that we were kind of conned in a way that we're not normally conned in. And what I mean by that is that everybody says, well, it's inevitable that Labour are going to win. It's inevitable. The Tories are toast. Labour are going to win. It's just that's what's going to happen.
Right.
And everybody talked about this as if it was an inevitability. And so it proved to be. And then, of course, during the general election, which only officially lasts for 2 weeks, rather than 18 months like it does in the US, but it only officially lasts for 2 weeks. But during that 2 weeks, they have polling all the time. You probably have the same thing.
Yeah.
And personally, I don't think they should allow polling during the general election. I don't think they should allow that. I think because the polling influences the result.
Yeah.
What you should have is like, I support this guy and I support this guy, and it shouldn't be influenced by how well you think this guy's doing, or how well, because you think, well, I was going to vote for him, but he's not doing very well, so I'll vote for the other guy.
Right.
It's not to waste your vote, supposedly. So we had all this polling that said, well, the Labour's going to win. Labour's going to win. Even Nigel Farage said it. He said, oh, we're going to get a Labour government.
Right.
And it was kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy, which turned out to be so.
Right.
And now we've got to stomach this shit show for the next 5 years. So, and I did vote for Reform because I ummed and ahed until the last minute. And there was another party that I considered, another small party, which didn't get any seats, but and I ummed and ahed about whether or not I thought Farage was the real deal or not. But I thought he's the best protest vote. He's the best thing. And I wasn't going to vote for the Conservatives, and I wasn't going to vote for Labour. And there has been this sort of feeling on the sort of alternative internet opinion that the Conservatives have to be destroyed as an entity. They weren't quite destroyed. They got 110 seats or something, but it's a terrible showing. It's awful.
Yeah.
Almost the worst they've ever had, I think. But but there's still a rump there that still survives. And I think people have been criticising people who voted for Reform because it made what they say is that it collapsed the vote for the Tories, allowing Labour to get in with a massive majority. But we've been following that. We've been following that philosophy for years. You always vote for the person you despise the least.
Right.
You always end up getting somebody you despise.
Right.
So,
right.
And I think we had to break out of that. But in doing so, the risk is that you let the person you really don't want to win in.
Yeah.
You have to destroy the Conservative Party first, and then the Labour Party. Even though, Boris Johnson actually made quite a good point. He said that Labour's support is a mile wide but an inch thick.
Yeah.
So there's no depth to it at all. So the Conservative Party has almost been destroyed. So that's one half of the Uniparty.
Okay.
now the other half has to be destroyed.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. Well,
but,
no, you
know,
said reform. Sorry, you said your reform only got 4 seats, right?
Five.
Five. Okay. Are they really nice seats? Are they really big? Are they, because 14 million votes, and
Yeah.
I'm not an advocate for direct democracy. That would be the worst thing to happen is an
It's
actual
4 million,
direct
not
democracy.
14. Not 14 million. They got 4
Okay,
million.
4. Okay. A lot, a million per, a little less than a million per seat.
Yeah.
So it breaks down to percentages. I mean, I don't understand how it goes from 4 million to only 4.
Well, because they only won in each seat is a constituency. Yeah.
Okay.
Like,
Like
I don't know what do you.
a
Yeah,
district?
sort of like that. Yeah, sort of
Okay.
like that.
Okay.
Yeah, Maricopa County. That was one of your electoral things. That was a
Right.
famous one.
Right.
So one of those. So they only won. They only got the most votes in each of those 5 seats.
Okay.
But in another 98 seats, they became
total.
second. Yeah.
Okay.
So in the other seats, they came second in 98 constituencies. So,
Yeah.
but a miss is as good as a mile. If you don't win, you don't win.
Right.
So, and the Labour Party's vote did not go up at all. In fact, it dropped because they had a couple of years ago, in 2009, they had a very hard left guy called Jeremy Corbyn.
Yeah.
Old-fashioned socialist, proper old-fashioned socialist.
Yeah.
He got 12 million votes or something, but Keir Starmer only got about 10, and yet they still won. Whereas Jeremy Corbyn lost massively to the Tories in 2019. So there are weaknesses in each system. Like you say, a direct democracy on everything would be chaotic and different.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we had with Brexit. One man, one vote. That's what we got.
Okay. Yeah.
And
that makes sense on a single issue. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But not for a governing body or an individual that's going to be governing anybody else. Direct democracy would be the end of America here because all the population, the more people live in New York City and Chicago, Houston, San Francisco, Los Angeles. So people out in Utah would have no voice whatsoever.
Yeah.
People in the deep South where I live would have no voice whatsoever. It would be we'd be drowned out by the other the greater populated cities, that typically lean very left. So
yeah. But I mean, it is a balance, isn't it? You've got to, that's why we have representative democracy, isn't it? Because it is a kind of balance, and in a way, both systems have their weaknesses,
Yeah.
But we get this situation where, when it's so far out of whack, then you sort of people start thinking, well, this ain't working, it's not working. So
it's hard not to get jaded.
Yeah, and of course this is. I mean, I've been guilty of this. I keep saying, well, we're not going to vote our way out of this, but half of the reason why we're not going to vote our way out of this is because 18 million people didn't vote.
Would it have made a difference, though? It would have made a difference if they voted for who you wanted to vote for, though, right?
Well, yeah, that's a good point. If we got another 18 million people who voted exactly the way as everybody who did vote,
yeah,
then I guess it probably wouldn't have. Well, I guess it probably no. If it was exactly the same, then it wouldn't have made any difference at all, I guess. But the point is, out of those 18 million people who didn't vote, were probably, not that this is a good thing in this instance, but out of those 18 million, there was probably 5 million people perhaps who would have voted Conservatives.
Yeah.
So would I have been happy with that? Because the Conservatives would have, I wouldn't have been happy there because I despise the Conservatives and I despise Labour. So,
yeah, right.
We're in a bind, man.
I know, clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. We're stuck in the middle again. So yeah, and that's funny. You talk about that's exactly what the Libertarians. You sound like that just mirrors the LP, where we're stuck in the middle between evil and slightly less evil.
Don't vote for the Libertarians, otherwise Biden will get in, or otherwise Trump will get in.
Exactly,
And
exactly. Or you're going to waste your vote. No, it's my vote, and it'll go
this
to
is why I
whoever.
think
Exactly.
that you shouldn't
Right.
have polling, because everybody decided just at the
Yeah.
beginning, right, I'm going to vote for Libertarians, and you don't know how many other people are voting for
Yeah.
Libertarians. It
Yeah.
might be another 5 people. It might be another 50,000 people, and you
Yeah.
don't know. And if you
Yeah.
had that, then you wouldn't know. And then people would more likely vote for what they wanted rather than voting against what they don't want.
Exactly. If they would just stick to their principles and realize, okay, well, yeah, if they just voted with their principles, that
Principles, yeah.
would cure 80% of all that right off the bat. But no, they want to hedge their bets and they want to be on the winning side and they want, they don't want to be on the wrong side of history by voting against a Barack Obama or anything like that. It's ridiculous, man. Just vote who best represents you, not who might win.
Yeah. But the other
I
thing
hate,
about that is that you can, as well, if you vote for who you actually want to, your conscience is clear,
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah,
Because, I mean, my conscience, voting for reform, my conscience wasn't clear. But,
okay,
I made uh, a fudged moral decision to vote for them, because the thing about, Farage is very impressive in lots of ways, and he got Brexit over the line. Not that it's been delivered properly, but nevertheless, you know,
yeah,
for what, he managed to do that thing that they just absolutely didn't want to do, which is have
yeah.
that referendum. So he is impressive in that respect, and he does highlight quite a lot of good things, but he's not a details man.
All
He's not
right.
a details man, and he's now the MP for Clacton on Sea, which is a seaside town in South Essex, which is probably not. It's not. It's probably seen better days, and being a parliamentary candidate, a member of parliament, part of the job description is you have a surgery, what they call a surgery, which is, you sit in the thing and people come and tell you their problems, and then you deal with this problem with, oh, this road's shut, and I'm not getting these benefits, and
Yeah,
my
fine details. Yeah.
yeah, and that's not Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage is the person who wants to be in the House of Commons, having a go at the government, and that's fine. But
He's a big
the other
picture
half,
guy.
yeah, the other half of the job is and being an MP is probably pretty flipping dreary a lot of the time.
Right?
They get pretty well paid for it, but not fantastic. I
Yeah,
mean, they
yeah.
less than 100 grand a year. I mean, they get very generous expenses, and of course, for somebody who's on 30 grand a year, it sounds like an awful lot. But to be a member of parliament, it's not brilliant. I
Yeah.
mean, the caliber of our MPs makes everybody think that they're paid way over the odds, which I can also understand.
Well, I tell you what, your MPs need to come to America because you can get voted into Congress almost penniless, but you're going to leave a millionaire.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
So,
yeah. Nancy, yeah, yeah,
don't get me started, man.
yeah.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous the insider tradings and the corruption. You know, you might go into politics, into federal level, a federal level office, and this probably works in the state level too. You have the best of intentions. The whole Mr. Smith goes to Washington feel, and within months you're corrupted by, you know, lobbyists and bribes and payouts and influence. If you want to be on this committee, well, you need to vote this way. If you want to do this, you've got to do that. A lot of quid pro quo and tit for tat. It's ugly. It's ugly
Yeah,
and vile.
yeah, yeah.
So
I'll bet it is. Yeah, yeah. I don't know how you get away from that, really, but we've got to try. Got to do something, because I mean, what's so surprising is, and you can probably give me a dozen examples of this off the bat as well. Is that there's a guy who tweeted something the other day. Have you heard of this guy, 5 times August? Have you heard of him?
oh yeah, great video. That
Yeah,
I
the musician.
I've seen a couple interviews. He's a very impressive guy. Yeah.
Just he put out this tweet the other day. It said, can somebody tell me why we actually have laws anymore?
Yeah.
And I knew exactly what he meant, because
Yeah.
we are getting to, we got to the stage now that open criminality and corruption it's just out in the open. It's completely, it's not even hidden at all. It's right in your face.
Yep.
Nothing happens.
I know. I know. It only happens unless it's politically expedient for those in power.
Yeah. So anything that is illegal, which anything that is illegal, which goes in the direction of the establishment, is ignored.
Yep.
Anything that is illegal, which goes against the establishment,
comes down a ton of bricks.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, Julian Assange is a perfect example of that. You know,
Alex Jones. Yeah. Yeah.
And this stuff is, I know exactly what it means. Why do we have laws? Because they're not enforced. I mean, I genuinely believe that we do not have the rule of law in the UK any longer. We don't have it.
It's the rule of power. It's back to might makes right. And I believe we've talked about the Constitution before. I used to love the Constitution, and I still do, as an abstract piece of paper that at one time we used to enforce and adhere to. Not anymore. You know, I was listening to a podcast the other day, and somebody brought up a really. It struck me. It struck me odd at first, but after I chewed on it, it made sense. The individual said, "If you have to make a law about something, you've already lost." Meaning, it should already be in the culture. It should already be a societal norm. While you're on the bus, don't punch that guy standing next to you. And you have to write a law about that? No, that should just be normal, you know? So if it has to be written on paper, game over already, you know, because you're going to have to enforce it. And what do we enforce it with? We enforce it with the state-funded, you know, the state-funded police, and there goes, you know, and they're corrupt as hell. So, yeah, it's definitely a lose-lose situation there. It all boils down to, and this is the funniest thing. Not the funniest. It's kind of sad and scary.
Nothing's funny anymore, is it?
Right. Yeah. It comes down to localization. Your neighbors, your family, people in your immediate vicinity. Get to know them, and I've advocated for this, and I'm working on it myself. By no means am I an extrovert, so it's kind of tough for me, but I'm trying. Get to know your neighbors. Get to know what's going on in your immediate environment, and find like-minded people. That's really your only hope. I have to step away from the Twitter, and I have to step away on occasion from a lot of the rhetoric and the propaganda and all the narratives flying around, because it'll just drive you nuts, you know. You need to stay, it's a delicate balance. You want to stay informed, but you don't want to go insane while doing it, you know.
Well, you do have to prioritize your own sanity, that's for sure. You know?
Oh, you have to, man.
I think one of the things that, you know, and I've fallen into this as well, is that the internet has been a wonderful tool for so many people, you know, and had we not had the internet, then we'd still be relying on the BBC and CNN to tell us what's happening, you know. And the fact that we now don't do that is only a good thing. But the downside, of course, is that the entire internet is like a safety valve for everybody to mouth off and, you know, and say, you know, this is bullshit. Don't you agree that it's bullshit? Yeah, I agree it's bullshit. And meanwhile, it's still going on outside. You know, the things are still going on outside. So the real world has to be dealt with, you know, and of course, you know, they may well just shut the internet down anyway, you know, shut it down of any dissenting opinions anyway. So we're back to square one again, back to pamphleteering and knocking on neighbours' doors and stuff like that. But but you know, I mean, I do think the sort of localism is is something worth doing. I mean, it's dreary. I mean, I was on my local village parish council for a year and a half, and yeah, it was dreary. It was dreary. It was difficult to go. I never wanted to go. It was utterly boring. And in the end, because I was working so many hours, I didn't keep it up. But I think I might have to get involved again now. But,
yeah. Well, see, and that's the trap that we're in. The economy is so horrible now. You have to work. You have to put money on. You have to put food on the table. You have to make money. So and I don't think I have to go to tinfoil hat here to think, well, maybe it's on purpose. If you keep the working population having to work so hard, so many hours, they don't have time, energy, or the money to get locally plugged in, much less have an impact in any way. You keep the masses busy one way or another, and they can't. They don't have the energy to make the change that needs to happen. So,
I think that we sometimes sort of overestimate the amount of work that requires, though. I think as a general rule, I think I've been saying this for a long time, that I think that people don't have to live and breathe this stuff,
right.
but they do have to turn up from time to time. And if people just turned up from time to time, and in America so I've understood, people have turned up at school boards.
Yeah.
And we don't want any more of this trans shit.
Right.
All these disgusting books you're peddling, and it's made a difference, and it's not like you don't have to be a full-time political activist. You just have to turn up occasionally and say, no, you're not doing that, mate. You're not doing that.
That's a great point. Yes. As you can tell, I waffle between being completely defeated to, wanting to hoist the black flag. I go back and forth like that all the time. So that's a great point.
It's almost like it's maintenance of your society. You don't. There are some people. Julian Assange. He risked everything.
Yeah.
And he put himself in opposition to the most powerful entity in the world.
Yeah.
But most of us don't have to do that. We just have to turn up and say, no, we're not doing that, mate. We're not doing that.
Yeah.
And I think it's just this sort of disengagement of so many people as well. And the behaviour of politicians means that you don't want to touch this stuff with a barge pole.
Yeah.
I don't want to, I don't want to be anywhere near the political arena, and, I can understand that, I can understand it, but I don't think that, I think people overestimate how much they have to get involved to change things. But I think everybody just has to turn up, because, if you have a village or a small town or something, and just 100 people turned up at the town hall, the village hall, to discuss something. Are we having this or are we not? No, we're not having it.
Yeah.
And that will kill that stuff stone dead. The trouble is that we accept legislation from on high, and it gets decided up there.
Yeah.
And then it sort of comes down and smothers us. But I don't know. I think we have to energize more of the normies, and that, I mean, the thing is, like, Donald Trump doesn't have to get shot in order to engage people, but but that probably will happen, won't it? So
right. No, and no, you're right. Kudos to the Blade Runners out there. It doesn't take, how long does it take to cut down a pole?
That takes about 20 seconds. Yeah.
So,
I mean, did you see that video where they took down 3 in one go?
No. Interesting.
There was like, and it was like 2 on one side of the street and the other side, and they just did it all in about 12 seconds.
Just walk by and zip, zip, zip.
Yeah. No, it's 3 different people.
Oh, okay. Oh,
yeah, so coordinated effort, and
that's awesome.
And somebody said, well, this is like poetry, and I said, no, it's like a ballet.
That's great, man.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
But did you know that there was this sort of I even saw something that they cut one down in Canada.
That is good. Oh my God, that'd be great.
Because this is
Yeah.
how this is sort of spread, you know. And I
Yeah.
do think, you know, when I say there's no voting our way out of this, you know, that is true to a certain degree. But there are other ways of getting out of this, you know, and you know that surveillance infrastructure is up there with no justification, really. I mean, there are some people who think, well, we should have that, you know, but it's just put up there and it's not put out to any vote or anything like that. It's just done,
Yeah.
and we're just supposed to accept it, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no reason why we should accept it, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, for instance, like, and there are certain things like when you vote for a political party, you know, I mean, if we all had time for this, we would sit down and go through the manifestos, wouldn't we? And, you know, do I agree with this guy and this guy, you know?
Right.
That's how we sort of think it should happen. But the Labour Party, you've been in for a week. They've just announced that they're going to release 40,000 people. I think it was 40,000 people out of the jails because they said there's overcrowding in the jails.
Okay.
Now, I mean, I don't know for certain, but because I haven't read the Labour Party manifesto and didn't read it before, but I'm pretty sure that wasn't in the election manifesto.
Right.
These 40,000 people out. There's only sort of 85,000 people in the jails anyway, you know. And these aren't people who have just been done for a bit of weed, you know.
Right. Jaywalkers.
Yeah, and that sort of, you know, and not even people who have misgendered somebody. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. These are grooming gang members. You know, these are child rapists and murderers. And they said, well, it's just, and this sort of policies just dropped from the sky. You know, it's like, you know, did anybody agree to this? I mean, did you say you were going to do that before was that? I don't remember Keir Starmer saying that before in his televised debates. You know, he didn't. To be fair, he said almost nothing anyway. But he certainly didn't say that.
Right.
You know, and you know, it seems that this is another example of politics has just gone rogue in so many ways. You know.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, of course, a manifesto is not law, but you'd think there'd be some adherence to it. You know, I mean, we all know that politicians don't keep their promises, but this wasn't even a they just decided to do. You know.
And we don't have any media to be actual journalists and investigate and ask hard-hitting questions. We don't have anybody backing us up, you know. But no, I agree. It's going to boil down to getting a little more involved and some civil disobedience. You know, nothing wrong with that. I'm still holding out hope that we might have a bloodless secession of some sort, because I fully believe that people that hate me should not rule over me. You know. So Texas probably right now has the most powerful secessionist movement right now. They're calling it Texit, and that I think it would be incredible if they were to leave the federal level of, you know, of the United States and become their own entity. We've talked.
Every Texan I've ever met has made a point of telling me.
Yeah.
You know, Texas was once an independent country.
Yes. In our secret meetings, we make sure to remind everybody else that. So, yeah, I see no problem. I don't see a problem. I wish that we could just get away from people that hate us. That's all. It's as simple as that. People that want to do us harm, you know.
We just elected all those people, actually. All those people hate us. You know, so,
right.
But we've been doing that for some time. So, you know, it's, I mean, it's, I don't know. Yeah, when you think of it like that, you know, it's, I mean, this thing about releasing all the criminals out of prison. I mean, if that's not saying, well, we hate you.
Yeah.
then I don't know what is.
Oh, right.
All these people we put in jail because they're dangerous people.
Kept away from
They're
society.
in jail because they're dangerous and we want to keep them away from you. No, we're not doing that now. They're all coming back into your community. It's like all the migrants, the millions and millions and millions of migrants. They're just. Right. I think I heard something about some town in Ohio, 20,000 people, and they got 12,000 migrants.
Yeah, out of the blue, overnight. Yep.
Yeah, that's nice, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, the French elections was a weird thing as well. Did you follow it at all?
A little bit. It really looked like Le Pen was going to really take over, but they changed everything up at the last second or something.
I'm not quite sure of that, but they have two rounds in their election, sort of like an elimination thing, and Le Pen's lot, the National Rally, in the first round stormed to a massive lead, and then they had the second round. At the last moment, they came third, and they came third because all of the other parties ganged up against them. And now I thought this was just sort of a bit of informal horse trading, that what they did, but apparently this is, I don't know enough about it, but apparently this is actually a kind of a semi-official policy that's been going since the 80s, since Francois Mitterrand is the idea is that you lock out what they called the far right, and Le Pen is of course called the far right. And the thing is, what they ended up getting was a load of hardline communists in now, but which you'd expect to vote again, to be in opposition to the so-called far right.
Right.
But what they also did was there were a lot of centrists that joined that group, and also quite a lot of people, quite a lot of the parties on the centre right. So everything from the centre right all the way to the hard left ganged up to make sure that Le Pen didn't get in.
Right.
And this is that's a more sort of explicit version of, I think, what happens in quite a lot of places, is this idea that, if, for instance, in your country, if it was closing the southern border, if you were to, I mean, I don't know this, but I would imagine that if you were to ask 70% of America, all Americans, whether they would want to have the border closed, I would imagine that 70% of people would say, yes, we need the border closed.
Yeah.
And it seems like, which is the same here, same in France, and it seems like that there is an establishment, well, you call it a plot, to make sure that the population doesn't get what it wants.
Right.
That's what it is. In the explicit, we've got what does the population want? They want this. Right. How can we stop them from getting this? Which is a completely arse about face way of how politics should be.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember in the old days that people used to say, oh, well, he's only saying that to get your vote. And I thought, well, okay, but at least he's trying to get your vote.
Yeah.
At least he's trying to get it. But now it's like, we find out what they want, and when we make sure they can't have it.
Right. No, it's messed up top to bottom, needless to say.
And this has happened the last 3 or 4 election cycles to Le Pen.
Yeah.
Every time they get within spitting distance of power, and at the last minute they all gang up on them and make sure they can't win. I mean, the only thing that is perhaps positive is that each time Le Pen's lot gets stronger.
Yeah.
And it gets closer every time, but I don't know. It's I'd have to look into it a bit more. I've got a French friend. I'm going to ask him about it, see how that goes. But
it sounds like Le Pen need to listen more to the center right a little bit more to bring them into the fold, without, I'm not talking pandering or anything like that, but see what they're talking about to see if that lines up with what they are also.
I suppose the reason that might not work is because the centre right, called the centre right, which is in our country would be mainstream conservatives, and in the US, mainstream Republicans, what some people call the rhinos, maybe, you know, that they're not really centre right. They're just globalists, you know, because what they want, and certainly it seems to be, you know, my guess is, I mean, I'm just speculating here. My guess is that the centre right want all this immigration because it keeps wages down. And increases their profits. So when you get someone like Le Pen come along and saying, look, our first priority is to shut the border, no more immigrants. They're thinking, oh, we don't really want that. Actually, we want to make some more money out of all these immigrants. I mean, there's a company in this country called Serco.
Yeah.
And I've mentioned before, until recently, they were run by the grandson of Winston Churchill, no less. And basically, it seems to be that they've got the contract to house all the immigrants. And it's an absolute money spinner for them. It's just bring in millions. And of course, the more immigrants come in, the bigger their profits get.
Yeah.
So, you know, the boats that come over, I mean, I haven't checked this, but I've heard that I don't know if you've seen them, massive inflatable, you know, like big Zodiacs, massive Zodiac things that take 50, 60 people at a time. You know, they come, you know, if they manage to get to the British coast, well, often they don't, because they get picked up with a lifeboat and then brought in, and then there's another official reason as to why they can stay, because then they're victims of a maritime disaster, so they get, you know, I'm not sure of the details, but then that means they can stay, and then they're not considered to be illegal immigrants, whatever. So there's all these little things which make it, the end result of everything is that we've got to have more immigrants, you know, and then if there's a war in the Middle East, you know, which this kind of is, funnily enough, we've got to have more immigrants. Every single thing that happens or doesn't happen means that we have to have more immigrants.
Are you up on Hungary? I believe Hungary's completely shut down their border.
I mean, and he's getting punished by the EU for it, isn't he? And the Poles have said they can use lethal force.
No comment. No comment.
It's not very libertarian, is it? But, you know.
No. Well, you know, I'm just saying, it could easily be, because I'm a strong proponent of private property. And this is my country, and my country should be well protected, you know. And I've said many times that I don't want to completely close the border, but we should be vetting people coming in and only accepting the PhDs and the most brilliant people in our door. You know, people love to quote the Statue of Liberty, "Bring me your tired and your wretched masses." But the line right after that is, it says, "through this golden door." That means not swimming through the Red River, not coming through the Canadian border, through the golden doors, through the Ellis Island, and through the processing centers that we've had, not that we use anymore. But I would 90% of all immigration should be shut down, in my opinion, and just let in the people that we know are good for us and can acclimate. I'd have no problem. At one time,
of course you know that makes you a far right racist bigot, don't you?
Oh, I know. I would love the definitive definition of far right. You know, that pretty much means I don't want to kill people. I don't want people to kill me. I want my children safe. You know, that's far right now, apparently. The whittling away and the lowering of standards. I'm a driver. I've been a professional driver for many, many years, and at one point, they used to have a hardcore rule that you had to speak English and be able to speak and write English. Didn't say anything about, you had to be white or anything like that, but at least you had to learn the language. Not anymore. Every day I see other drivers, and they're not speaking a word of English. I don't know if they know it. I don't know. Anyway, so
what does stop mean? What does stop mean?
Right. Our standards are for shit now, and it's sad. But no, I think we may have already talked about my theory is, not being from Texas, I'm familiar with the border pretty much to Mexico. You build the wall all the way from Brownsville to San Diego, California, but you put in 2 Ellis Island-like stations, golden doors, one in El Paso and one in San Diego, and you process people through those 2 points. But yeah, build the wall, damn it. In fact, I could see maybe we should just completely shut down immigration entirely for 10 years. And that'll give us time to deport a lot of these people out that need to go. A lot of people are saying, well, you can't just, what are you going to go knocking door to door to get 12 million people out of the country? No. What you do is you make it illegal to hire illegal immigrants. You make it no social services. You can't work. You have no social services. You make it incredibly difficult and uncomfortable for them to be here, and they will deport themselves. That's how you fix that problem, and it would take 10 or 20 years to get rid of most of them.
Yeah, I think that is what has to happen. I mean, it's, this is all being done as if it's a fait accompli. Well, they're already here. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. And because they now say that after 20 years, saying, well, you can't keep them out. You can't keep them out. It's not fair to keep them out. It's not. And then after 20 years, they just abandon that argument and say, well, it doesn't matter. They're here anyway.
Right. Well, if it can't happen, let's talk about the Spanish back in the 1930s. They got rid of a lot of unwanted people. They got rid of the Muslims back in the 1930s. It can be done, and the Muslims were already there, so it can be done.
Can be done. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting at the because I've noticed in the last sort of 6 to 9 months or something that people have started to say the things that they never said before. Deportation. Nobody ever said that before.
Okay.
I don't know why they never said it before, but I think, they've just decided that there is only, this has to be stopped. These people have to leave. They have to leave. And of course, the other thing is that, it's always couched in terms of, oh, these people are so desperate and pathetic, and we've got to look after them. And also at the same time, also saying that these people are, they're worth having. They're all doctors and lawyers and engineers and all these people that we supposedly need. But at the same time, also saying how pathetic and hopeless they are. So and it can't be both. It can only be one of them.
Right.
The other thing that is, do you remember when Castro opened the prisons in Cuba?
No.
Well, after the Bay of Pigs, in the 60s or something, when there was still a big anti-Castro movement in Florida.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it was a bit of a masterstroke by Castro, because he said, they were talking about all these people who wanted to come to America. And he said, okay, right. He emptied all the prisons, said, off you go. So he got rid of all the people he didn't want.
Yeah.
And of course, quite a lot of them became part of the drug gangs in Miami and places like that, I suppose.
Right.
It's a bit of a tactical masterstroke, really, because he got rid of everybody that he wanted and hand the Americans with a problem.
Yeah.
I think that there's an awful lot of that going around all around the world, is that all these countries think, what we can do with all these problem people, all these different people, that these uneducated, low IQ people, we don't, these violent people, we don't want them. Get them, and they all come to England, and they come to America, and they come to everywhere else. But and suddenly it's a problem we've got to deal with.
Right, and who knows what kind of deals these NGOs and these larger entities would go to these, these third world nations and say, okay, we're going to pay you X amount of millions or billions of dollars for these people because this is how we make money, by being good humanitarians, and you need to fill your coffers anyway and get rid of your criminals or whoever your low IQ people. So who knows what kind of backroom deals are going there. So
yeah, I mean, you can only, the depravity is only limited by your imagination, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. And this is the sort of degradation of our societies, really. Yeah.
Right. Between the, and I'll bring the mood back up just a bit here because I'm really getting depressed. No, I have to keep in mind that as a nation, we've been through the Great Depression. We've been through the Black Plagues and huge, large-scale disasters. We've all made it through one way or another. I think the biggest mistake we're committing right now is forgetting our history, or just forgetting history to begin with. I'm currently been getting into the history of the Spanish Civil War.
Right.
I'm just now started, so I can't speak very well about it yet. But I'm seeing a lot of big parallels of what's going on here in the States and what happened back in the Franco era of Spain. It's interesting. I just wanted to put a bug in your ear. If you need something interesting to read about, look up the Spanish Civil War.
I'll look into that a bit. Yeah. The other thing is that there is a sort of, I mean, I don't like to overstate it. There is a kind of awakening in a lot more people, in certain things that have just been shoved into the consciousness, under the radar. All the critical race theory and all that stuff, and all of this stuff has been shoved shoved into society without the normies noticing, and that's all deliberate. It's all deliberate. It's get it underneath and get it in there before they realise what's happening. But there are an awful lot more people talking about such things now. You've heard of Tommy Robinson.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he did a interview with Jordan Peterson the other day.
I still haven't. I saw the thumbnail, but I haven't watched it yet. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I have. I mean, it's really quite something because, I mean, Jordan Peterson's getting a lot of stick at the moment, but he's, generally considered to be sort of a high intellectual, and
he just needs to stay off of Twitter. Jordan, just give up Twitter. I can't stand him on Twitter. I love his lectures, but just give it a rest, man.
Tommy Robinson has always been this sort of low culture football thug that polite society wouldn't give him house room, just like, no. And this is the whole thing, is that nobody ever wants to talk about that. And he was the only person ever talking about it. He wasn't the only person, but he was the most high profile person talking about the grooming gangs and the problem of Islam and all the rest of it. The fact that he's just done a, hour and a half interview with him is significant, because, it's, for looking at trying to find good news it's not that difficult, actually. It's just that we haven't had the results yet. Hungary, Poland, Farage, Trump, Tommy Robinson, all of these things, they are becoming more and more mainstream. I mean, Tommy Robinson was persona non grata for 15 years. Nobody wanted to even talk about it. The BBC wouldn't have him on. They just absolutely wouldn't have him on. And he has kept plugging away at this. I mean, some people still hate him. Some people think he's a Jewish shield, and maybe that's true. I don't know, but I mean, I met somebody who said that he was part of MI5. Is he? I don't know. It's like, I mean, he might be, but if you wanted to discredit him, that's what you would say, isn't it? So
right.
But the thing is that this information can't be hidden any longer. And the thing about the Le Pen in France is that she gets stronger every time. She does get stronger every time, and each time they have to put in more effort to defeat her every time. So, we are moving in the right direction, I think.
True. The Twitter debate that I keep seeing is whether or not the woke has been put away yet. No, but it's going away slowly. I'm glad to see that the woke left is slowly getting losing power. It has been a long time since I've heard the term, the phrase "diversity is our strength." We used to get clubbed over the head, with this all the time with that, and I haven't heard that in a while. Yeah. The school boardrooms with Mothers Against Transing Kids is definitely a white pill there. Yeah, I have to keep reminding myself this is not Soviet era 1950s. This is not, it could be 1,000 times worse. And that's why I have to remind myself that Twitter is not real life. You can pick and choose. You can find little nuggets of info and some funny stuff, but it's not real life. And if I were to stay on a lot of these social media platforms long enough, I could understand why I would beat people down, because of course it's only the negative stuff is going to get amplified. Yeah.
I tend to treat it as, you're finding little golden nuggets in the shit.
Yeah.
Yep. Shit, but you do find these little nuggets.
Yeah.
You do have to wade through all this crap to get through it sometimes.
Right.
So,
right.
And a friend of mine was telling me that he called it doom scrolling.
Yep. Yeah.
And I've been guilty of that. That's for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yep.
Yeah. So, there was a talk about going back to the localism and stuff.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's some sort of way that you could kind of extricate yourself from the system, we could call it. This is a crap example, but it is an example. In Zimbabwe used to be called Rhodesia when it was a British colony. And from 1966 until 1980 it was run by a group, I can't remember what their political party was, but Ian Smith was the prime minister of it. And in 1966 they could see what was happening is that the country was going to be handed over to the black Africans to run, as happened in Zambia and lots of other places. And whatever you might think of the politics of it, they could see that wasn't going to bode well for them. And so what they did, they declared a thing called UDI, which is Universal Declaration of Independence. Bearing in mind it was a colony. Mm-hmm. So what they said was, we don't want to be part of the United Kingdom anymore. We don't want to be. So they made their own country, and it lasted for 14 years. But obviously, they couldn't hold it back forever, and eventually it got handed over to Robert Mugabe, who just drove it into the ground. And it's been a basket case ever since. But but I'm just wondering if it would be nice if you could take an area and say, well, we're not part of the United Kingdom anymore. We're part of this. But it's difficult in a densely populated small country. I mean, your idea of secession of some parts of the United States is probably more likely. But,
right.
But I don't. Yeah.
I think it would be more of there needs to be a more of a political will with the locals that want to get it done. And then, of course, it's going to boil down to whether those in power will allow it to happen. I would, as a libertarian, I would be remiss if I do not mention the state of New Hampshire. The New Hampshire, the state level government there is almost a majority of libertarians. Almost, if I remember correctly. Yes.
Live free or die.
They for the last 20 years or so, they've been building a libertarian utopia, and it's a very small state. I think maybe 1 million people live there, and and that's the testing ground of actual libertarian governance.
Right.
And they're thriving. People are moving in left and right. In fact, they're parked right next to Vermont, which is incredibly progressive.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
they get a lot of defectors and a lot of, and at the same time, people that have lived there for a long time, the progressives are also moving out. So twofold, they're getting even more and more libertarian. So there is definite hope there. They're just so small, and it's way up in New England with lousy weather. So
yeah. Well, I bet it's got better weather than we have, actually. But
yeah.
I suppose the other thing is that in a day-to-day, in a sort of day-to-day way, it's probably not that big of a stretch to move from New Hampshire to Vermont or vice versa. Right. So it's quite easy to do it. It's not like moving from New Hampshire to Texas, is it? Or,
no, right.
Or Vermont to Texas, or Texas to Vermont, isn't it? So that is interesting, actually, because their state motto is "Live free or die," isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of the few states that actually adhere to it. Their state motto. Mostly it's lip service for all the other states, just about.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah. So
I'll send you some stuff on the New Hampshire, the Free State Project is what they call it, and it's really interesting. It's really interesting, and it's a much smaller scale than almost any other state around, of course, but they're making it work, and it's really interesting.
You start with acorns, don't you?
Yeah. So definitely.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, and quite positive too, which is an unusual thing these days, isn't it?
I know you gotta find those nuggets.
Yeah. I think that the direction of travel is good now. Is the right direction. I mean, it's an oil tanker, but we are beginning. I think we are beginning to turn it around.
Slowly turning that battleship. Yeah. It takes a while, but
there's still going to be a fight on the bridge for the tiller, but
definitely.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And at the very least, if we don't see it in our lifetime, maybe our kids, can benefit from it. So that's the way I have to look at it.
I think you have to. I mean, I think that's a very good point, actually, because I think so many people believe that there's no point in resisting because they think, well, it's just so far in the future we'll ever change it. And I'm reminded of that old phrase, that in a good society, men will plant trees the shade of which they'll never enjoy. And I think there is, and this pertains to Nigel Farage, for instance. I mean, whatever you think, if you think he's the real deal or not, I mean, he's 60 years old. He's a young 60, but he's still 60.
Yeah,
he's still 60, and by the next election he'll be 65. And even if he was really successful, and even if reform swept the boards, they're not going to do it till 2034, by which time he'll be 70.
Yeah.
So the thing is that these things we have to put things in place. We spent a generation letting it slide, and it will be a generation getting it back.
Exactly. Hopefully Farage is mentoring a couple of young men to take his place,
I would hope that he is. I haven't seen any evidence of it, to be honest.
Right.
But then he's
pass the torch.
Yeah, well, you've got to give him a chance, really. But I mean, he's not going to form a government. He's only five MPs. The Labour have got 412 or something. So we're in for some grim stuff in the meantime. I mean, our so-called energy secretary Ed Miliband, who was a very unsuccessful Labour Party leader some years ago, he's just been appointed energy secretary. He's basically said that he's refused all new drilling licenses in the North Sea. And he's put at risk 250,000 people's jobs, apart from anything else.
That's his job. He's energy. Go get some more energy.
Yeah, well, that's not, being the energy minister isn't doing that anymore. Energy minister seems to be make sure we don't have any energy. I mean,
the whole climate change.
It's just another one of those ridiculous virtue signaling policies that he's just gonna coat the country in wind turbines,
Right.
and I mean he's just given 3 licenses for massive solar farms in Lincolnshire. Now Lincolnshire is what you might call the breadbasket of England. It's where all the agriculture takes place.
Oh, well, that's on purpose because so we eat the bugs.
Yeah.
You get rid of the good farmland, so we eat the bugs.
Yeah.
And you live in your pod, and you will own nothing and be happy. So it's all part of the plan there. What is your opinion, or maybe even larger scale, British citizens' opinion on nuclear energy? See, that's what kills me is a lot of these climate change alarmists won't talk about nuclear power, even though that's the answer to everything they're bitching about.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, what they say is they say, oh, the only way to solve everything is worldwide Marxism, and then you say, well, what about nuclear power? And they go, well, I don't want nuclear power. I want worldwide Marxism.
I saw that meme. I don't want. Yeah, I don't want the problem solved. I want what I want. Right.
Yeah. I went to a thing in a neighbouring town. It was what they call a political hustings, where you get the political parties, the local ones, have a discussion.
Yeah.
And it wasn't as interesting as it should have been because there was no reform candidate. There wasn't even a Conservative Party. So it was Labour. There was the Lib Dems, who I've said mean nothing and stand for nothing. There was the Greens, and then there was a bloke from a guy called Rejoin. Now, Rejoin is basically, it's about going back to the European Union. So it was all one-sided anyway. But they were falling over themselves to say what they were going to do for net zero and all the rest of it. And they even had this young girl, and of course in this way they pandered to the young. They had this girl who was 15 or something saying, oh, I'm really worried about climate change, what's the panel going to do about it? And they were all falling over themselves to say how they were going to increase environmentalism and all the rest of it, and what their carbon footprint was. And they always say, well, it's 7.8 and it's better than it used to be, but I know I've still got work to do. It's like, oh, fuck's sake. But there was two things that none of them mentioned.
Yeah.
One was nuclear power.
Yeah.
And the other one was China. So it's not going to make any difference. No matter what we do, it's going to make no difference.
Right.
But if we had, France has nuclear power, like 78% or something of their energy needs is met by nuclear power.
Yeah.
And now, after having been a pioneer in nuclear energy, the world's first nuclear power station was in the northwest of England. Now we've lost all that knowledge, and now we have to just import it from France. It's difficult.
Yeah. Keep in mind that the carbon they want to eliminate is you and me. Yeah. That's what they want to eliminate. Yeah. It's ridiculous. There's the anti-natal movement is a scary thing where people are just I don't want to have children because why would I want to raise children when they're all going to die and because of climate change anyway. It's ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. Yeah.
I am quickly running out of steam here, Mr. X.
Yeah. Well, I guess we just have to, as you said before, keep pushing that boulder uphill. And
definitely. Keep an eye on Barron Trump. Keep an eye on him.
All right.
Talk about mentoring and passing the torch to the next generation. It's going to be young people like him.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah. But it's funny because there's that phrase, isn't it? The worst what was that phrase? The worst are full of passionate intensity, and the best lack all conviction. You know,
Interesting.
Yeah, you know, and you know, I feel people our age are the people who are most worried about things. You know,
Well, we've got
because
skin.
we can't remember how the world was.
We
Kind of have,
remember, and we have skin in the game. You
yeah,
know, we have children, we own property. We have the ability to actually pay attention and know where we've come from.
yeah,
You know, I came from nothing pretty much. And by God, I worked my ass off to get to where I am and what I have, and I want to keep it. So,
yeah. I mean, you know, when I was young, the surveillance state was just something in a George Orwell novel, and
right.
now it's in everywhere.
And it was supposed to be fiction, not a documentary.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But young people don't know this. Young people don't
No,
know that there weren't cameras everywhere. You know,
no.
we do have to tell. We have to tell them. Anyway, fella, I suppose we ought to ruminate on that. And yeah,
The pendulum is swinging back to where it needs to be. It's just very slow moving.
yeah,
You know.
yeah. We've got, particularly over here. I mean, you might be entering into a slightly better time with, you know, when Trump gets in, which I assume he will. But we've got to deal with, you know, a proper socialist government who don't know what they're doing for 5 years. It's going to be grim. But anyway, we've been through worse.
Definitely, definitely. Keep your powder dry, my friend.
Yeah. Okay, fella. Let's call it a day, and
All right.
we'll speak again soon.
Definitely, definitely. Take care,
Okay.
man. Bye.
See ya.